Let's go ahead and get started this morning. We're going to be back in the Psalms of Ascent, Psalm 120 through 134. Before we get started, Brother Bill, will you open us in a word of prayer? We've been using the Psalms of Ascent to illustrate us moving in the right direction. And that we've said and we painted this picture, that means moving in Jesus toward Jesus. And I use that phrase because, for us, the church age, it's illustrated here by the Israelites. And Ms. Pat, what they were doing is they were, moving to their help, from whence cometh my help. They were moving to their help, but they were doing it in the power of their help because he was their help. And so, Brother Bill, that's what we're trying to do too. We're trying to learn from these Psalms and find out how we can move in Jesus toward Jesus. Now, we started in 120 and 120 and 121. We kind of saw that movement, that decision. Then in Psalm 122, we said that you had to make a move from just what you can see and from the natural into an area where we began to see with the eyes of faith, moving from seeing to believing. Then last week, Psalm 123 and 124, they're really the Psalms of prayer. And Psalm 123, immediately you started out, there's some progress in 123 from 120, 121. Because in 121, Brother Hank, all they saw was the mountain. All they saw was the challenges. But when you get to Psalm 123, they're not talking about the challenges. Now they just see God. So there was some growth there. There was some progression. But also, when we saw in there, we saw this picture where how we were supposed to come to him. Because this is now a prayer that just is, he's going to God and he's not concentrating on the hills. But it gives us this really good picture of how we should come to him. And that's dependent. That's like the servant. That's like the slave. That's one who can't provide for himself, doesn't decide what his day is like, doesn't give his own security. All of those things are dependent. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? What food or energy or ability are you going to give me to accomplish that with? Everything was dependent upon him. And so we saw that in 123. And then 124, well, it's still prayer. Brother Hank, it's totally the opposite. Instead of all of this asking, it was just a whole bunch of affirming. Because I don't mind asking because I know this is who you are and I know this is what you're going to do and I know this is what's going to happen. And so we saw this snapshot of how we should grow in prayer. And if we're going to continue on this journey, prayer is definitely going to be a part of that journey. Minus prayer, we won't continue. And so we spent some time there. This morning we're going to look at Psalm 125 and 126, and we're going to try to see what he has for us from these two Psalms. Let's go ahead and read them. Or at least Psalm 1. No, we'll read them. Psalm 125. They that trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. You can take right that and just jump down to the end of verse 5. But peace shall be upon Israel. Here's the picture. Here's what it's looking for. Brother Wayne, Psalm 125 has been painted as this picture of just security, of just stableness. This is the stableness of those who follow after him. And Doug, before we actually jump into it, that's really how we should be. When we talk about, I know, Brother Bill, he's just a Christian. One of the marks that should form in my mind when I say, Brother Bill, Christian, is that he's stable, is that he is secure, is that he's not willy-nilly and he's not falling all over the place and he's not nervous and overreacting and having to run around and make apologies for constant blow-ups and constant fear. And there's stability there. And you can't be much more stable than the mountain. And so it begins with this way and it ends with that way. But this is a surprising psalm. In fact, these next two have one thing in common, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time. They that trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. As the mountains are round about Jerusalem, so the Lord is round about his people from henceforth forever. That's twice he said that in 2 verses. We really shouldn't doubt forever. He solves our problem forever. It's not something that's lost. Verse 3, for the rod of the wicked shall not rest upon the lot of the righteous. We're going to spend some time coming back. That's going to give us a picture of when this was written and what it's talking about. Do good, O Lord, unto those that be good, and to them that are upright in their hearts. As for such as turn aside unto their crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them forth with the workers of iniquity, but peace shall be upon Israel. Psalm 126. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord hath done great things for them. The Lord hath done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. 2 verses most people know from this psalm. He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. Now, we're going to jump into those. But Brother Bill, before we do that, I want to go over some things we know. Let's just review some things we know. As Christians, we are God's children. We're the called out ones. We're those who are set apart. And we've been talked about, we've been called, we've been pictured in the New Testament as those who God is working in. You know, we're the field he's working in. We've been those who God works through. We're the workers in a field. We've been pictured as those who are involved in his work because, you know, he's given it into our hands. You know, there's this picture where it's been placed in our hands and we now have to do something with it. So we're his set apart ones. He was working in us. He works through us. And we have a work to do, right? That makes sense, Justin? We're good? So what is his work? Now, I try to put this together, make it nice and short. God's work that he wants to accomplish through us is that his truth be proclaimed. His truth, the only truth, real truth be proclaimed. That's this book. That his truth be proclaimed. And while we're proclaiming his truth, we need to display his love. Those two go together, truth and love. While we're proclaiming his truth, his love needs to be displayed. Brother Bill, that's going to result in his glory be reflected in us, because that's what his son did. That's what he did. And then that's going to have an effect where his gospel is going to be believed. And when all of these things happened, God is honored. Now that's his work. That's what he's left for us to do. He even has a strategy how he's going to do that. Very important. I had like a third grade teacher. Tells you, Miss Pat, I remember third grade. It was like third grade, written above the board, and it was goal without a plan is just a dream. God has a plan. That's what he wants to accomplish, but he has a plan to accomplish it. Ready? Complicated plan. It's the church. The church today is his plan to accomplish his work. His children gather together in a set-aside place, and they gather in his name to be light, to be salt, to affect his work. This is our calling. This is our cause. This is supposed to be our passion, and all of this is done through common people. Yep. But Bill, that's amazing. That's glory to God amazing. That is, I can't believe that's why that first part, you know, we're the field, he's going to work in us. That's why that's so important. Because if you told me that we're supposed to do that without him, then I'm going to listen to you say, hey, and then I'm going to walk out the door. No, it's not happening. But he's going to accomplish this through his common people. This is what he wants to be done. And who's going to say he can't do what he wants? Okay. Now, why do we say all that? Because in the Old Testament, this was done through Israel. Maybe even more importantly, through the city of Jerusalem. You see, Jerusalem, Jerusalem was the place where you went to commune with God. So, it is specifically that place on earth. Only that place on earth. Now, when we started this, we said, because of that, it is a uniquely blessed place. But it was not only uniquely blessed, it was uniquely troubled. It has been destroyed and rebuilt more than any city on earth. We're not going to do this, but there is a study there to be made of this city of Jerusalem dying and resurrecting, dying and resurrecting. It's a great picture. Just something to throw out there. Now, in these Psalms, this uniquely troubled place, and that's why it matters, it's been destroyed. Look at Psalm 125. For the rod of the wicked shall not rest. Okay, he's talking about this holy place, Bill. Rod. He who has the rod has the power. The rod will not continue to rest, to be in control, to have the power over this, my holy place. Okay. At this time, during the writings of these two Psalms, we're talking about a time where this is not going to Jerusalem, I'm going to the temple. This is, there's nowhere to go to. This is, it's been destroyed. It's been torn down. This is, we're going to this place and there's going to be overwhelming challenge and problems and struggle. What we need to do for like 10 minutes is, I believe, the way to not misapply or misinterpret Scripture is to try to understand what it meant to those it was written during the time it was written. And so I want to kind of jump back there and let's examine this time a little bit. Because this idea, this terrible phrase, that the wicked are in power over his holy city, that's a problem. So a little history, and I wrote it down so we can go quick and I don't stay on any of it for a little while. But Israel, the nation of Israel, Saul, David, Solomon, period of great blessing. Well, everything changed right after. But Tony, everything changed when Solomon died. Man became greedy and we wanted power and we want, you know what we want. We want control, we want influence, we want to be heard. And God's city, God's way of dealing with man, split. 10 tribes go to the north, 2 tribes to the south, including Jerusalem. And for the next 300 plus years, it's got to be plus, you can't give a year because they didn't fall at the same time. For the next 300 plus years, almost unrelieved persecution, story of tragedy, day after day, without exception. They seem to go further and further from God. They seem to leave God. The prophets warned Israel, Jerusalem, you cannot stand without God is what makes you stand. And they just continue to go and continue to go until finally, what they had prophesied, the enemies of Israel came in. Israel was destroyed. Jerusalem had to go through this long siege. And then finally, Jerusalem fell. During this time, many fled. The Bible tells us many more died. And the best of the best, whatever was left that had any value, they packed up and took in exile to Babylon for 70 years. During that time, Jerusalem here is a pile of rubble. It's a mess. I want to go back to Jerusalem. There's nothing to go back to. The walls are gone. The temple is gone. They destroyed it. You want to stand against us? Let me show you the power of man. Put him on a cross, we'll kill him. 3 days later. And that's what we're talking about here. It's going to rise again. It says, and we know the first came back in Zerubbabel, and then Ezra led a group back, and then Nehemiah led a group back. And Ms. Pat, that's where we're at right here. God's going to break the rod. He even tells us why. He's going to break the rod lest the righteous fall. He's going to break the rod so the righteous who are there don't fall prey to the same thing. Now, again, you got to keep this in mind. Doug, 70 years have passed. They've been carried away. They've never seen Jerusalem. They've never known temple worship. Okay? All that they've had is they were brought over there with a plan, and the world's plan was, we're going to take all that stuff away from them. We want them to lose their vision of their homeland. We want to change their language. But Tony, we want everything to be different. It was a definite plan of Satan to do everything he could to take the Jerusalem out of them. But that was not God's plan. And so he's going to break the rod. They're not going to lose their vision. They're not going to settle into this comfort place in a secular world, even though everything was given to them. They're not going to forsake his purpose for them. They're not going to accept this dominant world view of what life is going to be like. In fact, after 70 years, Justin, you know what they said? We're going back. And that's where we kind of pick this up. We're picking this up in this picture of a group of people who are going back. And Doug, you know what happens when they finally decide to go back? Well, it's like, Psalm 120. When you finally decide, there's now a decision. It's like we're going to forsake those things and we're going forward, and it's a new beginning. Here are people of a new generation, and preacher, they think they've discovered God's calling for their life. They're actually right. But you know what that does? That just changes everything. They've discovered his calling. They desire his will. We are going to go to Jerusalem. We're going to build Jerusalem. We're going to fellowship with God. We're going to know him. But Bill, everything's going to be wonderful. It'll be wonderful. I'm not waiting for heaven on high now. I mean, these people are going out as excited as can be. They've abandoned everything. And they are launching out into this new ministry, this new work, this new future. Look. Chapter 26, verse 1. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. It's a new vision. Look at verse 2. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. But Nate, they're packing up. They're in a tent. Every night they light a fire. Somebody goes and gets their guitar. Probably not guitar. Something like a guitar. They start playing. They start singing. But Hank, they can't wait to get back there. Everything's going to be different. And let me tell you, there's such excitement there. Look what it says. It says they're getting pressed. It says, our tongue was singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord hath done great things for them. Donnie, they're so excited. There's such joy. This is such a movement. Even the nations around them say, God's doing things there. But things change. When we look at Psalm 126, which is where we're going to spend 15 minutes, I think there's two clear parts. And these parts, Justin, these parts are in every believer's journey. Unfortunately, it's probably in every believer's journey multiple times, but it's there. And that's the joys of the beginning, and we'll see that in the beginning. We've seen that a little. But those joys in the beginning at some point give way to the difficulties of continuing. So, when you get to this passage, all right. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. That's past tense. So, Doc, I think I can safely say, here's a group of people, guess what? That journey to Jerusalem, they've already made it. All that excitement, all that, this is what we're going to do. It's all happened. They're now there. They've come back. Now, instead of all of that excitement, they wake up every morning and they see rocks and they see stones and they see weeds and they see, Miss Pat, they probably begin to see what's not there. They're not even noticing what's there. And the difficulty, the hard work, the living in reality, it begins to show up. The joy of the beginning. We all know this. We've all experienced this. We've all seen this. Doug, I don't want to say you're old, but you're old. So you've seen people called to the mission field. And you know what they want to do immediately? They want to skip deputation. They want to go straight to the mission field because there is an excitement inside of them. They're going to change the world. You had a new teacher. Well, I went to Christian school. I know everything that's wrong. You just hire me, and I'm going to fix all of these things. That's good. That should be there. That excitement, that belief that God's called me, that God will, that He's working. I'm going to go to full-time Christian service. How quickly can I quit my job, sell the house, and go to Bible school? My dad was in the military, and pretty much every 3 years, somewhere. You know, sometimes it was 2 years, sometimes it was 5 years. But Doug, you know what that means. You move. You know what? One of the most exciting things was when we joined the new church. Because we were in the old church just long enough to see all its warts. The new church has no warts. Everything's great in the new church. It's the same in life. Oh, my old job's getting hard. I got a new job. These people are, Ben, these people are friendly. They're not like those old people. These people at this new job, they care about me. I've become kind of an expert on this. There's newly married couples. You know what newly married couples say, but they don't say out loud? Jay, this is what they say, but they don't say out loud. We will never become dull and boring like mom and dad. We're going to stay exciting like this all the time. How's your day? Mine too. New baby. I haven't experienced this. I'm no expert yet. No grandkids. But you know what happens? You got excitement and showers, and one of those things, I don't know where that word comes from. Shower. I know shower them with gifts. It still sounds silly to me. But everything is wonderful at the new time. But very soon, the joy of the beginning gives way to the difficulty of continuing. That's where we find these people. You know, the baby, so wonderful, won't stop crying. The new couple finds out that they have bills and pressures, and worst of all, in-laws, who might be the greatest of pressures. The new job becomes just as burdensome as the last one. And the new ministry is so much harder than you thought it was going to be. And Brother Bill, it doesn't seem to be giving you the return on your investment. Okay. That's a group of people who traveled back to Jerusalem to meet with God and change the world, and saw dirt. That's the people in Psalm 126. They had started a great work, but verse 4, turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Now, if you look on the map, you know what's south of Jerusalem? Desert. This is where you get the idea of streams in the desert. Okay, what they're saying, Justin, is, you know, this wonderful work we began to start, it's dry as the desert. Please send me some water. Because the baby just won't stop crying. And the ministry is just too much and I want to quit. Verse 6 goes even further. He that goeth forth weeping. I'm going to work every day crying. It's that hard. It's that much. I'm just overwhelmed with the task you've given me. This is the picture of what's going on. So from that, we'll try to make an application. And that is simply this, Doug. How do we continue? If this is the picture, how do we keep going? First, if we had boards, this is where I would put it. I'd put it on the board. If we're going to achieve anything significant, we must continue. If you're going to parent the child that you once welcomed with joy, But it can get to, Brother Hank, surely not with your two children, but it can get to the place where the joy just seems like, challenge. But if you're going to accomplish anything in that life, you better not quit. It's the same in work. It's the same in ministry. It's the same in marriage. Your marriage might get to the place where it seems a little dry. How are you going to continue? How do we sustain? I did this morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I just Googled, average tenure Baptist pastor. You got to stick in Baptist, so somebody else will check it. That's what they'll put in, and you'll be wrong because your number won't match theirs. Baptist pastor. So this will be the best of the best, Brother Bill. Okay. I was surprised at first. I saw the first survey. It was 7.2 years. I was like, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. That's much longer than people stay at a job. So then I checked the next one right underneath it. It was 4.9 years. These are way different surveys. Then I checked the next one underneath that. It was 2.7 years. 2.7 I went and read through. Preacher, what they do at the 2.7 is they take out all of those who have been at one church longer than 30 years. And that's where the number ends up. Meaning if you were talking about the average person, not the average time, that transition is constantly moving. Now, I went ahead and read, because there's lots of reasons you can move. Reasons they moved. 1, finances. Offered more money. 2, bigger work. I guess there's some understanding for those. And this wasn't in any of them, but I'm adding it to it because I'm sure this is part of it. At some point, the challenge to continue became bigger than the excitement of beginning. And so they moved. They quit. Sure. You run from them. Stick this in there. I have to go fast. But just as a little warning, Will Robertson. I'm old enough to remember that. We must be very careful living on the adrenaline of new beginnings. It can develop a pattern of life where as soon as we begin to see the pressure and the problems, we trade it in. Light comes on the car, we trade it in, get a new car. I don't want to fix anything. But that happens. I see the warts in the church, new church. Job becomes tough, new job. And we justify new job all the time, but you better be careful justifying new job because we'll use that same justification for every one of these other areas. New relationships, new ministries, new approach, new. Give me the bright, shiny new thing. Yeah. If you're not careful, it happens that way in church. New person walks in the door, everybody gives the new person all the attention, and you forget Old Faithful. It is very easy to fall under the attraction of the bright, new, and shiny. And it has become the American way. There was a book written called Who Moved My Cheese that just pushes and pushes and pushes the value of change for change's sake. It makes a good argument. Doug is going to say, look, if you keep the same people all the time in your employment, all you know is what they know, and you already know that. But every time you bring in a new person, you have the potential to add all of their knowledge plus what you know. So if you continue to turn over people, look at all the knowledge you're adding. I could not disagree with that book more. Constant change will accomplish nothing. But it is such a temptation. The Christian life is a glorious beginning. It has a great ending. But in the middle, it can get a little dry. And the answer is streams in the desert, not constant new beginning. Because it's in that desert. Where did Paul go, little learn? Where did John the Baptist go? The answer is in the desert. It's to persevere through the desert and depend on the streams. What was once exciting will become familiar. What once seemed to sparkle and be the new attraction and just change everything will become ordinary. The church started with Emmanuel, and then you got flaming tongues, and then you got thousands of listeners. But pretty soon, you got, the council at Jerusalem, and can we eat meat or not? And let's not be petty about every little thing. There is a challenge in the middle period of our Christian life. And a lot of us, the joy of beginning is long behind us. And the release of the ending seems to be a little bit ways off. But how do we sustain in the middle? And I think this psalm gives us 3 good strategies. Praying in hope, sowing in tears, and anticipate in faith. Praying in hope, verse 4. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. The south, as I said, it's a dry, parched land. It's the desert. And here what they're doing is, give me water in the desert. I'm going to tell you, that is all God. And I love that. You know who can make it rain? We have no part in this. There is a part here where when we get tired and it just seems no hope and nothing's going to change, and that's what happened. That's what happens in most marriages. I don't know why we're here in marriage now. It's like nothing's ever going to change. She won't change. He won't change. When you get to the place that nothing will ever change, it's time for divine intervention. Only God can make it rain. Only God can do that. So it gets to this place. Are you going to limit God? Can God do this? Can he make it rain in the south? Because if we believe that he can do that, if we believe that the rains will come and new life will come and there'll be flowers and the desert's going to bloom, then we always have hope. Now, that's the great temptation. The first great temptation is to lose hope. The minute you let somebody say, it will never change, there's no hope. Why continue? Now, this psalm starts out with, there's always hope. God can make it bloom in the south. Our same God who brings life from death, and you hath he quickened and made alive because you were dead in your trespasses and sin, this same God that can make us alive can bring change to whatever area we are making impossible. Pray with hope. 2, sow with tears. These things are in perfect order. Imagine that. I'm trying not to be so sarcastic. See, people think I'm making fun of them, but really I just think I'm the dummy and I'm making fun of me. Because that's my thought. Oh, it's in perfect order. Shocker. Because it starts with having hope, belief that he can do it. And then Brother Hanke goes, sow in tears. These are total opposites. Can you make it rain? Can you plant a seed? You see the difference? It starts with believing he can do it. Now, if we believe he can do it, then we'll do what we can do. But the minute we let no hope go in, there's no work. No hopey, no worky. All victim. It's terrible, take care of me. That's America. The danger, stop hoping, is followed up with the danger to stop working. I heard, this was a couple weeks ago, I heard on the radio, Johnny Erickson Tata was telling the story of a lady who had gone through, it's a long story, had gone through one trial after another. And so she goes to church and her pastor, is waiting for her in the back door. And she comes up to him and he says, I'm praying for you. Well, preacher, this is what she said. I'm glad, thank you. What are you praying for? And, he does well, I'm praying that God will strengthen you, and he'll give you grace, and he'll be with you, and he'll help you make it through. Just going to add one more. Can you add to your prayer that somehow I'll benefit from all of this? That my sowing in tears won't be empty. That it'll reap a harvest. But that's what we have to believe. Pray and hope, sow in tears, because we will reap. There's reason to plant, because he's going to bring the rain. He will make change. It's not wasted. And that's the third. We need to anticipate in hope. This middle struggle part of our life, it's not the end. What we are and what we're dealing with today is not what it will be. It's not where we end up. Just in they that sow in tears, all tears shall be wiped away. And we shall be made like he is. In fact, I like the security in Psalm 125. They that trust in the Lord, they shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed, but abideth forever. As the mountains are round about Jerusalem, protected, so the Lord is round about his people, henceforth and even forever. We are encouraged not to quit, and we're given that promise.